All right, guys, welcome back to Misery Point Radio. Thanks for joining me again. I'm excited to break in the first show of this year after my little break I had with none other than my good friend Justin Roth from War Curse. Justin, welcome back to the show. It's actually been a long time since we've had a chance to chat like this.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. It's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, shit, the last time you were on, it was just before, the shit hit the fan, if you will. And, it was already, we were having a blast talking about all the crazy shit that's going on in the world. And then, of course, the big C happened and a bunch of stuff got fucked up in the world and in the industry, of course. And I wanted to also thank you because I took some time off and then I saw this cool post that you did, which was very complimentary towards myself and the show. And, I was in kind of a rut and feeling a little bit shitty. And that just really kind of made a huge impression on me that day, and it kind of pulled me out a little bit. So I don't know if you realize that, but that power of positivity went a long way with me. Ironic because the content of your post was, hey, I was listening to this show and I realized how shitty things have been for me. So what's going on? How you feeling these days?
Well, it's funny, man, because I feel like watching your show. I think it got recommended to me on YouTube. I didn't look for it or anything, or maybe it was like a memory or something. And I was like, oh man, I remember doing that show. It was super fun. And I listened to it and it was like, damn, like the world was so. I think I made that post in like, I don't know, what, 6 months ago or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but that interview was from 2019 and we were talking about like all the cool shit going on. At that point in time, we had just put out Eradication, which was doing well. And we had all these tours and all these big plans, and little did we know, right? So, yeah, it was like, man, life was a lot cooler in 2019. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but watching your show and seeing that, like, things weren't always so shitty, and like there was a different. Man, I went through some dark times, man. Like since the last time we talked, and it sounds like you did too. I think everybody did, honestly, and it was, I guess, contrasting where I was in my feelings and my language and in my outward messaging and all my social media and all my stuff. Like it had just become like a snowballing of negativity and just bullshit, and just seeing what I was like in 2019 and seeing how much happier I was and how much more positive and like optimistic I was. It really kind of put things in perspective and kind of kicked me in the ass a little bit to like get working on the new album, get things going again, to like quit dwelling on, all the things we lost, and I guess try to rebuild. So
Yeah.
it did a lot for me too, man, just to watch that show. It was a really good show. So
Oh, thank you, brother. It's yeah, and I'm excited because things are picking back up. Case in point, you just got back from a super badass tour around the old Mexico, and Strike Master, who you got a chance to play with. I was introduced to them about 3 years ago from my friend Keith Morash, who is doing some public relations work for them. And I kind of became a fan of them because they definitely were kicking around that old school thrash vibe, very raw, full of energy. In a way, kind of reminded me of old Exodus, just with how in your face it was. And so you had a chance to go hook up with these guys. How did that even come to be?
yeah, so I mean, for one, Keith's an awesome dude, and the Strike Master guys couldn't be any cooler. It was not the first time we'd played with them. We had co-headlined a NYDM show with them in Queens, New York, like way back when, 2015, 2016, something like that. So we knew them, and we had a couple of tours with the same promoter, Seferino of EA Booking, put this tour together. And those tours, kind of due to COVID, due to some logistics and some other stuff, had been postponed, canceled, however you want to look at it. And, versus sitting around waiting for like another opportunity with a big band. The first tour we were going to go out with a band called Rada Blanca. And if you don't know who they are, they're kind of like the Scorpions of the Spanish speaking world or something. They're enormous band. Like we were supposed to play the fucking Pepsi Center in Mexico City. Like it didn't even, it made zero sense. Like who got drunk and decided that like we should be playing like these massive arena shows and stuff. So either way, versus sitting around waiting for another one of those to roll around, it was like, let's roll our sleeves up. Let's like do it old school. Strike Master are friends of ours. Let's go play some thrash metal shows. We don't give a shit. Our band philosophy has always been 10 or 10,000. Like we don't care who's in the crowd. Like we're just going to go in there and do the thing. So the tour was awesome. And, those guys, you're right. Like old school thrash metal, they kind of just beat you over the head with it. I mean, Exodus would be a good comparison. From the time they start until the time they stop, man, they're just 100 miles an hour. Like you're not getting any ballads out of a Strike Master. They, the crazy thing though was like the way that that tour was billed. I mean, like our name when the promoter put it out, like he had billed us above them in Mexico, which felt to me like incredibly weird and wrong. It's like they're a much bigger band than us, much more established. We're going to their country, and sure as shit, like we get to the first show, and the promoter's like, "You guys are last," and it's nerve wracking, but like playing after those guys elevated us to a level that like we haven't been on maybe ever. Like it just the iron sharpens iron. Like those guys went up there and just obliterated the place, and we had to follow them, and we followed them every night. We played last every night, and it forced us to just absolutely get up there and kick some ass. So it was a great experience, and huge thank you to those guys for putting us over like that.
Yeah. And, I don't know how you say it in Spanish, but they definitely give off a kill all the posers vibe, don't they? It's in your face for sure.
Well, like, have you seen the current lineup of Strike Master? Like, these dudes, yeah, they're no joke, man. Like, in a fight, the three of them would probably take out, like, any five-piece band you could find. Like, there's some no-nonsense dudes, man. Walter in that band, that dude is a fucking monster, so, yeah. If anything, it was cool because we felt very safe walking around with them, like, anywhere we went, so nobody's gonna mess with Walter. It was really cool.
Had you been to Mexico before, just on any kind of a personal trips or anything like that?
Yeah, so I had been to Mexico a handful of times in my life. I'd been to, like the touristy Cancun kind of thing, just vacationing. I had been to Mexico City with Exodus. Where else did we go with Exodus? We did the Cozumel, we did the boat thing. So yeah, I mean, I'd been there in a professional capacity. I've also been there just kind of messing around. What I had not done though was go deep into like proper Mexico.
Right.
There's a really, really big difference in going to, Cancun and like sipping, fruity drinks at a resort and like going to Zacatecas or, places that nobody I know has ever been. So that was actually probably the coolest part was just to almost kind of dispel some of the negative that you hear every day in the news about what's going on down there.
Sure.
And to, to get an actual first world look at this, like firsthand look. And yeah, Mexico was nothing like what a lot of people fear that it's going to be like. You think you're going to go down there and immediately get kidnapped and also other crazy stuff you hear about on the news. But man, everywhere we went, the people couldn't have been any cooler. A beautiful country. We didn't see any kind of nonsense happening anywhere we went, and I mean we went everywhere. So that to me was probably the coolest part was just actually experiencing Mexico for myself and not through the lens of like a Fox News program or something.
Sure. Well, that's exactly why I bring it up. I mean, my wife and I went to Puerto Vallarta some years back and fell in love with it, and we stayed in a touristy area, but definitely when we went out, we got out off the beaten path. And we experienced, like the siesta times where those motherfuckers just close everything in the middle of the day. And if you're prepared for that, you got nowhere to go. You got nothing. It's crazy. But we did find this one joint, and they let us in there, and they're like, haha, stupid tourists, but please come in, and they fed us, and it was great. And my wife did have an incident with some peeping Toms in the bathroom. But besides that, it was pretty epic, and yeah, we did find ourselves getting lost in an area that we shouldn't have been in. And I believe the taxi driver that ended up picking us up was like, well, you got two options. I can take you back to your place, or you can risk walking the rest of the way. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that ride now. But it was beautiful, man. Nothing better than eating ceviche right out of the water on the beach, and just kind of seeing everybody in their elements in the crazy 120-degree weather, followed by a lightning storm, which was just nuts. So what was some of the cool shit you got to do? We'll talk about the music in a minute, but just, what did you get to do while you were in Mexico? Something that was exciting or fun, or something you just don't get to do here in the old States?
I mean, the food was incredible.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, I'm missing that something fierce. I made the mistake of going out for Mexican food when I got back. What a colossal
What were you
disappointment.
thinking?
Well, I gave it a week. I let a buffer build up, but I mean, I eat so much Mexican food all the time anyway, like any other time. So yeah, I had that craving and went out, and God, that was terrible. But yeah, I mean, the nice thing was we had a couple of days off, but the way that the tour was scheduled, Like, we got to Guadalajara, which was a really cool city and a really great show, but we got to Guadalajara on a day off. We had a show the following day, and then the next day we were off, so those were our 2 off days. So we stayed in Guadalajara for 3 straight days, like, same hotel for, like, 3 nights, and really got to know that city, and, like, I mean, you know me, and I know how you are, so, coffee snob, just went walking around finding I drank enough coffee to probably kill a mere mortal, but,
Their
yeah,
coffee's
just
so fucking good over there.
dude, it's so good, man. They're on a whole nother level, and this is where I love the people so much. Like, we had gone to this place called Cafe Madrid a couple of times in a row, and me and Walter of Strike Master, bassist, this guy, he, like, interrogates the barista when he walks in. It's hilarious. Like, this dude, he will ask you, like, 50 questions, and if he doesn't like your answers, he says no, and he just walks right back out. So, like, this dude, he can sniff out a good coffee spot. But we went to this Cafe Madrid place, and after ordering the same drink, because 'cause I'm just sorta like, it's all in Spanish, so I'm just kinda pointing and guessing and hoping for the best.
Right.
I had the same drink a few times, it was incredible, and I asked the owner, via translator, of course, like, how they make it, and versus trying to explain it to me, she takes me behind the counter and has me make a few of them. So, like, I'm getting, like, barista lessons in Mexico from the owner of this cafe and, like, learning some tricks, and, it was just incredible, man. But, a lot of walking around markets, a lot of just before the shows, we would go out and just sorta, like, go to wherever, like, the public square was where people would hang out, and, we would promote the show on foot, like, go meet people. I went through, like, 5 big bags of guitar picks, just, like, handshakes and, "Hey, come out to the show tonight," and, like, it's funny because I have gringos wandering around Mexico, like, everybody assumes you're famous anyway, which is, like, super hilarious. Like, I took so many pictures with strangers that weren't into music at all, they just see you and stop you for a photo. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was, like, a good opportunity to, like, draw a little attention to the show and just kinda take in the culture and, like, mingle with the locals. So, that was my favorite part, honestly. It was just going out for coffee and just meeting people.
Yeah. And everywhere you turn, there's food. The street food scene everywhere is amazing there. And we talked about this before, and I know that we have several friends that this is a thing, but let's just say that you're out on tour. Probably the one thing that people do is just eat the most shittiest, garbagey food, and then you feel like crap the entire time you're out there. And then you get back and you got to purge all that stuff. You don't feel like that when it's all fresh prepared. It's not like fast food. It's not like, going to a burger joint and, eating 5,000 calories of preservatives. It's everything is so fresh there, which is just absolutely outstanding to me.
Yeah, I mean, that helps a lot. I don't eat meat to begin with, but I think avoiding some of the mystery meat helps you stay healthy on the road. So, there
Right.
were there were a couple of places that we ate that the guys ate some stuff to me that looked a little suspect. I mean, nobody got sick or anything, but yeah, I mean, I try to it's like it's risk management for sure. So, I don't know,
Yeah.
I try to avoid anything that looks questionable.
Well, and
But
we all know
yeah.
what rule number one on the tour bus is. So, make sure you watch what you eat there.
Dude, that was the best part, man. Like, this tour was so incredible. We did it was a van tour. We had no bus, no
Oh,
trailer, straight up van tour with a backline company. And dude, we had hotels every day. Like, we never had a drive longer than maybe well, one time we got screwed by traffic, but the normal drives were like, 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours at the most. So, I mean, it was one of the easiest tours I've ever done, certainly one of the most enjoyable. But you don't realize how much easier it is to stay healthy and to perform your best when you have simple things like a shower more than once a week and a bed to sleep in. It's incredible. So I
yeah,
think
no.
that really helped us stay in top form every night too. So
Well, that's awesome then. So getting to the, I guess, the meat and potatoes of it then. So you guys played like 8 or 9 shows, something like that over there. What's the crowd reaction like when you guys are playing? Obviously, a hometown hero, Strike Master, probably have a pretty good reputation all over that place. But how was the response to workers?
so yeah, I mean it was almost like I can tell you the exact moment every night in the set. It was always during Severed Crosses, which was the second song in the set. We would hit that middle section and, like, me and Blaine do a goofy little guitar trick where, like, I throw the guitar over to Blaine and, like, he frets it while I pick it and, like, I give the crowd the finger. I was actually nicer in Mexico. I was, like, waving and giving them the horns and stuff because I felt you don't know who you're flipping off of the crowd down there. Yeah, like, every night, like, that would happen, and that was the moment that we would win them over, and then the rest of the set would just be a banger. But it was like yeah, it would take us, like, a song and a half for them to, like, warm up to us and, like, get on board with what we were doing. But in the middle of that second song every night, we would catch fire, and then the rest of the set would go amazing. Following Strike Master, so I mean, they're like I say, they're just relentless. You know, their whole set's fast. They don't have a single. They don't even have a mid-tempo song. Like it's just fast. You know, so we would get up there and we would open with a couple. Like the first block of the set, really, the first four were just absolute bangers, and we would play our thrashier stuff. But like conventionally, we kind of cater our set so that there's sort of some peaks and valleys. You know, we try to play we were playing, I don't know, 70 minutes or so a night. And we would try to slow it down in the middle. And like Mexico wasn't having any of that. So about, I don't know, 3 shows in, we were playing a couple of new songs, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
We played the 2 that I let you hear. And we had to start reading the room. Okay. So like we were doing the Anthrax cover. We were playing Only.
Which is fantastic, by the way. Yeah, a whole nother level on that one, but continue.
So we if the crowd was a little older, so depending on the city, depending on the size of the crowd, the Only cover would either go over amazingly or it would completely bomb because like a like a bunch of like 16 to 20-year-old Strike Master fans have never fucking listened to John Bush era Anthrax,
Right.
and they had no idea what was going on. So like we really started gauging the room, and like I hate to say, like we were literally just surveying, like, all right, how young's the crowd? How old's the crowd? And if the crowd was young, what we were doing, we were cutting the new songs out, and we were adding in a couple of thrashers that we didn't rehearse and didn't really have planned in the set, but like we just worked them out in sound check. So we put a couple more rippers in there. We swapped out the Anthrax cover, and just without rehearsing it or anything, we figured we could smack it together. We put a Seek and Destroy into the set just to get people singing and having fun. So yeah, I mean, just reading the room and being smart about it. I think the crowds ate it up. I mean, I really do. I think every night we got a far better response than we could have ever hoped for our first time in a country. And everybody wanting autographs afterwards and signing stuff, and we sold a lot of merch, and it was honestly, man, it was great. Mexico has some of the best fans.
Yeah, and I have heard that, which is why I wanted to ask you how the response was, because from what I understand is that the energy level from the crowd is pretty unrivaled, and that those guys go crazy. And I was curious if any of them, did you run into people that were familiar with you, like before you played? Did you have any people that knew who you were?
Yeah, there was some. There were definitely some who either knew who we were because they organically knew who we were, or I mean, we did a lot of promoting, and like Metal Blade ran some ads for us, and like a lot of people found us like before we got there.
All
So
right.
I think a lot of the Mexican fans just did their homework. So like everybody knew Serpent because that was the video we put out. So
Sure.
like in their best English, they would tell us like, play the Serpent, like they all wanted to hear. And we played it, and they'd go nuts for it. But yeah, I mean, as far as energy goes, man, like there was one night, I don't know if you saw the video, we were playing Torion. We were in Torion, and the stage, it was a very weird layout, but like we played, it was like we were on the second floor behind a guardrail, and then below us on the first floor was like the open floor was the pit. So like literally the pit was in a pit. And I mean, these dudes were circle pitting, and somebody knocked a bunch of bottles over. There was broken glass on the floor and beer, and they were slipping and landing in the glass. They didn't give a shit. Like they were just tearing the place up. So yeah, it was like, those crowds are nuts, man. They're awesome. So
That's great.
some of
It's those guys are. I know that they love the music, but I always hear about all these festivals, and all these festivals go to like Mexico or they go to South America. And there's like a ton of European stuff too, but I always hear about the crowds in those areas. Super jealous that I've never had a chance to play out that way. So that just must have been super badass.
Yeah, it's funny because you hear about all these wonderful things happening in Europe, and you hear about all these wonderful things happening in Latin America. What are we leaving out here?
Oh, wait a second. Maybe a little country called the
Yeah.
U.S. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting.
And
But
did you feel? I mean, did it feel different than playing here? I mean, I know you've played shitloads
Yeah.
of stuff here in the States.
yeah, and I mean, not to not to knock the U.S. fan base,
Sure.
by any, we have amazing fans here, and especially like some of our regional and like kind of our old school fans, they go nuts for us too. But like, yeah, it's a whole nother kind of thing. I think it's the level of enthusiasm, and I think what a lot of it comes down to, I think, is just like appreciation. Like if you live in New York City, or I mean, hell, you're in Seattle, that's a big city. even in Cincinnati, like, I mean, how many shows are going on tonight in your city? You
Oh
know,
man, more than you can count.
yeah, so I mean, it's like when you go to a place like Zacatecas or Torreon or one of these like super off the beaten path
Yeah.
cities, like, dude, we might have been the only show they got that week or that month, so like it's like, well, this is my one show this month, like I'm gonna get it all out. So I think that's part of it, like the lack of saturation, which is like the opposite of what we have here. Comparing it to Europe, I would say it definitely rivals it. Every band kind of obsesses over Europe, and Europe's sort of treated like the mecca of metal. But I think like Latin America absolutely gives it a run for its money. And with as screwed up as shit is in Europe right now, and with the cost of touring in Europe right now, I think a lot of bands ought to really start looking at Latin America as like a suitable replacement, one, income wise, and two, it's like if you want to play good shows or like you said, big festivals, I mean, there's no shortage down there. So
Yeah. Now, was this something that you guys did just for the sake of doing it? I mean, was this a financially worthwhile tour? Did you guys take it in the ass, or did you come out ahead and make it worthwhile going there from a business standpoint as well?
no, man, this is the most we ever been paid for any tour in our career. So
Oh shit.
yeah, I won't disclose how much we made, but I can tell you that like normally on like a regular tour, we're stoked if we get home and like we broke even
Right.
or like have enough money to like, you know, go out to dinner when we get back or something. But no, this was like on a whole nother level, man. This was like you come home and like you weren't salty that you missed work for a week. Like you made more money than you made at work, in a normal week kind of thing. So
Awesome. So
yeah.
it was a good overall experience, and that makes me excited for things because when you look at this, we've talked about this a million times, but really the record industry as a whole is not where bands make the majority of whatever pittance they make. It's really touring and merch sales and things like that. So, and I know that you have your own business and you've been in the merch game. So I assume that was probably what helped to make that the most lucrative for you guys out on this tour.
Well, I did not print our merch for this tour like I normally do. We sourced it. We had it printed down there. Just shipping costs alone
Oh yeah, brutal.
make that stuff kind of tricky, especially right now. Shipping, like I just did a bunch of Exodus merch, and the cost of shipping that stuff, man, the shipping is like almost as much as the merchandise right now. So, but yeah, I mean, being smart with your merchandise, we didn't over order, we didn't under order. We were realistic going in, and we found a independent printer down there. We didn't use like a giant merch company or anything. We found somebody with a good reputation who printed it for us at what I thought was a very fair price, and we just did like the one tour shirt. We didn't try to go down there with like 25 designs and come back with a whole bunch of stuff we had to pay to bring back. So yeah, we just did like the one shirt with the tour dates on it. We did like the special edition with like the Mexican colors on our classic undone skull design, and people loved it, so it was cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you mentioned the 25 designs. I was at a show relatively recently, and I was like, holy crap, how many freaking shirts do I have to look at? Just give me one with the fucking tour dates on the back of it, and
Yeah.
not a picture of like your mom or whatever's on the cover. I don't know.
Well, it's tough. I mean, it's like right now the merch game is so competitive, and like you say, I mean, that's normally in a traditional tour, that is like how you make your money. Normally any other tour, it's like you either sell that merch or like you don't get to the next city. At least for us anyway. We don't have a humongous guarantee like some bands. So when you live and die by that merch, like you got to make sure you've got something for everybody. You got to really lean into that. So it was nice with this one, like going in with like a nice guarantee and like with a promoter who treated us right and covered expenses and flights and all that sort of thing. Like we weren't going to starve to death if we didn't sell t-shirts every night. So we were able to actually be smart about it versus like going into it with like almost like a sense of desperation that you go on a lot of times try and I hate to put it that way, but it is. It's like, man, you go into some of these shows, it's like, when you're touring the US and you get to, fucking Butte, Montana or someplace, and you're like, man, if we don't sell some merch tonight, it's like the gas lights on when you pull up to the venue, and it's like everybody's got their hand out wanting their per diem, everybody's hungry. It's like, damn, we better sell some shirts today. But like we didn't have that, we didn't have that feeling, so it was cool.
Yeah, and you weren't playing for drink tickets, so I mean,
Yeah.
that's always a bonus right there.
Yeah, no, we weren't paid in exposure. Nice.
or better yet, you didn't have to pay to play, which is
Yeah.
sadly still a thing. I don't understand it, but yeah,
It's whole-
I mean, so many venues have closed down too, so it's really just kind of limiting. I think a lot of bands are trying to get into these places, and they're still getting hosed on that. So, I could probably go for hours and hours and hours about all the dirty shit in the industry, but
Yeah. Well, I've been doing a couple of podcasts lately, and people seem to want to bring this stuff up all the time, and like the merch cuts right now, and the one thing that nobody's talking about, well, I guess Taylor Swift sort of brought it to light, like the monopoly that Ticketmaster and Live
mm,
Nation have, just as far as like the front end of the business. But what nobody's talking about are all the independent venues that got bought by Live Nation during COVID and how they finance that stuff. So like that to me is the biggest kick in the ass, is like a young band that enjoys playing, independent venues and not like the corporate shitholes that want a 20% merch cut. Like your options now are so limited
yeah,
because of if your city had 10 independent venues pre-COVID and 5 of them went under and Live Nation bought 4 of them, like now there's 1 left, and like the odds that your band's going to get it versus, another band that was, bigger or, booking their tour a day before you did, it's a lot harder right now. So what Live Nation was doing, and I'm just amazed nobody caught on to this, they were announcing these big mega tours. And I know you saw at least like 10 of them get announced where it's like some giant tour package. And this was in like 2020,
yeah,
2021. They knew damn well those tours weren't going to happen. But what they did was they took pre-sales on all that stuff. That's an influx when you're talking about, 20 and 30,000 person venues. And you're talking about tickets that are 100, $200, $500 for these tours. Do the math. That's millions and millions and millions of dollars of working capital that they brought in that they were free to do whatever they wanted with for 2 or 3 years. So at a time where all these independent venues are struggling, these assholes are taking in millions of dollars to then buy said struggling venue, and nobody was getting refunds on the tickets because they were afraid the cost was going to go up or they were going to miss their spot or whatever. So yeah, man, it was a really dirty thing. So yeah, a lot of independent venues are gone, and it makes touring a hell of a lot harder.
yeah. And also with a lot of those, it's like the artists, they have no control over what those ticket prices are either. I mean, it reminds me of 30 years ago or whatever it was when Eddie Vedder went on a rail against Ticketmaster, and they wanted to have $20 ticket prices, and they were having to charge $100, and this is fucking 3 decades ago.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster should have never been allowed to merge. That was a huge screw up on the part of our government, and it has created a dreadful monopoly in the music industry that I fear, if it's not corrected, is eventually just going to kill live entertainment. Ghost tickets went on sale the other day in Cincinnati, and a friend of mine messaged me. She bought 2 general admission tickets, and with all the fees and all the bullshit, it's $500
Yeah.
to see Ghost. 2 tickets for Ghost, $500. Like, I don't know what year we're living in. Like, I must have woke up in a bad dream, but like the last time I saw Ghost, tickets were like $45.
Yeah.
So this like $250 shit it's absolutely insane. And I don't know at what point people stop paying for it. It's either going to get to the point where like we have to collectively, everyone as a whole, bands included, have to say enough is enough, or like maybe I don't know, people are going to have to plan to go to 1 show a year. Like that's all their budget's going to allow. If it's $500 to get in, and a t-shirt's $50 and a beer's, $12, like people are going to get to go to 1 show a year. So like, it's going to kill the touring industry as well. We're dangerously close right now to like the point of no return. Like we've walked right up to the line, and it's like somebody needs to do something quick or this is going to like fall apart fast.
Yeah, my wife and I go out. That's kind of what we do is, once or twice a year, we go to, a quote unquote big concert, I guess we'll call it, with your stadium bands or whatever. And you're not getting out of there with less than $500 expenditure. And if it's out of a city that, I don't live there and you're going to travel, then you got hotels and you could be $1,000 to see a concert,
Yeah.
and that's for the big acts, if you will. But some of the independent acts too. I mean, you're seeing those tickets up there over $100, and 2 people to go, it's still a few $100 by the time you throw all your stuff in there too. $50 shirts. I mean, that's just a thing. It is what it is. I mean, we used to laugh at, we went and saw Roger Waters, and the biggest anti-capitalist on the planet, right? Charging $75 for a thin ass fucking t-shirt. I was like, hey, I'm all about merch and that's fine, but don't rally against the capitalism and charge me $75 for a shitty t-shirt.
Yeah, he's such an asshole. I mean, so many of those guys are like him and fucking Zach De La Rosa and fucking I mean, 3/4 of these fucking guys, they can just hold hands and jump into a fucking volcano and nobody would miss them. They're just a bunch of assholes. I love the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Like, we're for our fans, this, that, and the other. Just like, you know, the thing. So back to what you were saying before, this is where the hypocrisy really comes into play. Some of these bands do have a say so in their ticket prices. Some of them.
Sure.
Like when you see this fucking thing, this dynamic ticket pricing, have you seen this?
I have, and this is where the Taylor Swift thing kind of comes into play, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, with the dynamic pricing, the artist opts into that. That's not an automatic feature.
Yes.
The artist has the option to say yes or no to that. So, like, any artist who opts into this thing and then acts like they had nothing to do with it, they're absolutely full of shit because that is not the default way that tickets are sold. Even as much as I hate Ticketmaster, like, I'm gonna let them off the hook a tiny bit here, like, the artist still signed off on gouging the shit out of their fans. So,
Sure.
like,
That's a good point to bring up.
yeah, it's now secondary market and scalpers and bots, and there's 100 other things you can complain about that, like, make tickets outrageous to begin with, but as a whole, I feel like, one, Ticketmaster has done nothing to, like, shut down the bots that'll buy up all the tickets. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Neil Young. It was one of the older guys. Somebody it was, like, a year ago, maybe? They required you in order to use your ticket at the door, you had to show the credit card that they were paid for with. And I thought that was brilliant because, like, that's gonna shut down a lot of the scalpers, a lot of these assholes that just, like, do whatever they gotta do to get a presale code,
Right.
buy 8 tickets for the sole purpose of throwing them on StubHub and, like, quadrupling the price. So, something's gotta be done about scalpers. I mean, I think that even legally, something needs to be done. I'm not a big fan of big government or, like, a lot of government intervention, but at a certain point in time, like, we have to do something about these crazy fees that are for nothing. It's just free money for the corporations. We have to do something about scalpers. We have to do something to shut down the insanity that is going to kill the music business.
Yeah. And I mean, insanity abounds. That's for sure. No shortage of it. And I agree. I mean, live music is one of the last true bastions of just artistic expression. And if it was to go away, I that might be eat a bullet time right there. That's just can't even fathom that not being a thing.
Dude, I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you.
Well, let's move on then to some other cool happenings. Let's talk about what the fuck is going on with Warcurse in the studio. New album's done, masters handed in. Shit's about to get real. So let's talk about the new Warcurse album,
Yeah. What do
or
you want to
whatever
talk
you
about?
can talk about in regards to the new Warcurse album.
Yeah, let's see what we can talk about. I can't say the name of it. I can tell you that we recorded 10 songs and a cover, and one of those songs wasn't gonna fit on the album. So you're gonna get 9 songs and a cover song on the album. I think it's our best work. I love it. We started in June, so I mean we took our time with this thing to put it nicely. We definitely we checked all the boxes and a lot of editing, ourselves, a lot of taking an honest look at songs once they were, quote, done or like demoed or recorded the first 2 or 3 times around and trimming the fat and making sure that, it wasn't just a bunch of like masturbation and try to keep the songs. Yeah. Cut out a lot of the wanking and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. That was a terrible answer, man. I don't know. Felt kind of vague. I don't know how to answer that because I can't. There's certain shit I can't say.
Okay. So there's a lot of stuff obviously that you can't talk about, but you are with Blacklight, right? Which is a division of Metal Blade. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so it's a joint contract. Blacklight Media is the project of Chris Santos, like celebrity chef Chris Santos.
Whom I
He-
know well because I myself am a celebrity chef.
well, there you
And
go.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, dude, Chris is a super rad dude. So yeah, like but our contract is through Metal Blade. It's a cool partnership that they have. I guess Chris is really into sort of like the DIY, like underground scene, and he wants to see bands like mine get elevated. So yeah, he puts a little skin in the game, and Metal Blade puts the team behind it. And so I mean, everybody we deal with is just Metal Blade. There's really no like Blacklight Media staff is like Chris and sometimes Matt, but yeah, it's pretty much just deal with Metal Blade. Pretty cool.
Yeah, which is, I mean, to this day, still, there's only a handful of metal labels that really get the recognition, and Metal Blade and Brian Slagle and just that whole dynamic there has been largely responsible for, I think, keeping a lot of metal at the forefront and keeping the knowledge out there. Now, when we first talked, I think that relationship had just gotten started. Either you had gotten signed or you were in the process of getting signed. I don't remember. It's been a while now, but I assume that stuff kind of all got put on hold in the middle of all the bullshit that went down.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, we had talked to them about Eradication, and for whatever reason, a deal never transpired. So we were on their radar, like with the last album, and it's worth noting, like kind of on what you just said, though. Like they do keep their ear to the ground. I mean, even thinking back to like the 2000s when metal was kind of like had petered out for a while, and they were the first ones to really kind of acknowledge like the Kill Switch Engages of the world and like some of the newer like more modern bands. So like they've always kind of had had it to the pulse or whatever. So Metal Blade as a whole, one of the things that I appreciate about them too is they're one of the last true independents. Like it's worth noting that like Metal Blade is still Metal Blade. All these other guys have been bought by, Sony or Universal or somebody owns like pretty much all of the metal labels now are owned by somebody else. Where Metal Blade is still Brian's company. It's still Metal Blade is still the same record label that it's been for, 40 years.
Yeah. And so how, as far as working with you then as an independent label, I mean, do you find that they're supportive of your material? Is there a lot of back and forth, a lot of direction like, we don't like this or don't like that, cut that shit out. Hey, Justin, shut the fuck up and stop posting on Facebook, stuff like that.
I got one talking to about about a Twitter post from, I don't know, 5 years ago that somebody unearthed and tattled on me for. I can't go into detail there. But, no, they've been super cool, man. They've been super supportive. There has been none of this, change. No one's given us any input on the sound. No one gave us any input on the direction. Just to kind of stay on the up and up. Like I did send Ryan Williams is our A&R. He's our rep there, formerly Black Dahlia Murder bassist Ryan. So super cool dude though. But like I would send him stuff along the way and kind of show it to him, and he was like, "Man, this sounds awesome. Keep doing what you're doing." So like when we submitted the album, it got approved almost immediately. No revisions, no edits, no nothing. I think we did all that ourselves, like before we sent it in. So yeah, man, they were super cool. There was no pushback. They weren't leaning on us to do a certain thing or be a certain way. Like they were totally they signed a band and they let the band do their thing, which is cool.
So
Very admirable.
when it came back time to, after the break was over, if you will, to get back in and start moving things forward again, was that driven by you and the band, or was that driven by the label guys like, hey, we gonna get this shit done or what?
I was a little of both. I think like so it was kind of odd because, traditionally I think when you do a new record deal, most of the time you're doing that with an album in hand. I don't think a lot of bands like go fishing for a record deal and then make the album. Like
Right.
we kind of did it backwards, but again, like we were talking prior to COVID and we had talked to them on the last album. So like we signed with them in, I don't know, it was 2020 or 2021. I'd have to go look. But yeah, then we made them wait like that entire time for an album. They knew that we were writing and they knew that we were working on things, but there was a period of time there where like we just couldn't get into a studio. Everything was closed, and there was, then just like touring, same sort of thing happened when like, the world opened back up. Well, every studio is now booked out for 6 months to a year because everybody's going to run out and make an album at the same time. Like we had all been home bored writing new albums. So it was almost intentional that I don't want to say we drug our feet, but like we waited it out just a little bit to like let the traffic jam sort of like start to sort itself out. If you look at all the albums that have come out in the last year, it's just
Right.
like my bank account's taking a beating just buying all these albums that come out every week. So
Yeah.
it was a little intentional, but yeah, I mean, at a certain point in time, I was like, "Hey guys, like, what the hell are you doing?" So, we started recording this album all the way back in June, and it was definitely it was partially us being very critical and making sure that we were turning in the absolute best album that we could. It was partially scheduling. It was a lot of things, but like we literally just handed in the final masters, like the actual files that'll go to production yesterday. So I don't know how soon this will air, but for listeners, we started June 1st and it's February 21st right now. So Yeah, it definitely took a little while to make this album, and it won't take as long to make the next one.
Well, I mean, I don't know that's I feel like that's a fairly decent turnaround time. I mean, I've there's albums that take years in the making, and literally from like, hey, we went in the studio in the songwriting process, and a year and a half later we finally hand in the finals. So I don't know, 6 months, 7 months for you guys to do a turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, and then, there was mixing in there. I mean, I think
Sure.
we were probably done tracking by, like, the end of December, like, first week of January, maybe. And then, then there's the back and forth with the mix and getting it mastered and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it took us, like, realistically about 6 months to record. That wasn't 6 months straight, like,
Right.
don't get me wrong, it's not like we were there for literally 6 months staring at an engineer. He would have killed us, but, nor would we be able to afford something
Yeah.
like that. But, yeah, I mean,
True.
I think a lot of the bands you're talking about, like Chinese Democracy or whatever
Oh my
that out
God.
like 150 years in the making, but, like,
Sure.
I think a lot of those bands are writing that stuff in the studio. Like, they're going in with, like, maybe they got a couple ideas, but, like, they're kinda going in there and, like, building it on the spot. Like, we don't have the luxury, the time, the budget, we're never gonna be able to do something like that. So, what we do is the next best thing. We all have recording gear. I think every musician does now, but Blaine, our vocalist, is a really good engineer. He's actually pretty good at editing, mixing, all that sort of stuff. So, we go to Blaine's house and, like, we sorta write in our own studio, but, we had these songs, like, mostly fleshed out before we got there, and then it was just a process of trimming the fat and getting rid of some of the wanky nonsense that wasn't adding anything to the songs, and, you know, taking a look at how we could make things better, shorter, formatting things, potentially for, like, satellite radio play or whatever, making sure we didn't have a 2.5 minute intro on every song, which, is kinda synonymous with thrash metal, but, just kinda being a little more conscious of, like, where this album's going, hoping that it will be a little more visible than the last one. So
What?
it was a process.
Yeah, and I felt like Eradication was really just solid. I mean, all around solid. And I wondered, where you were gonna go with that next. Last time we talked, not on the show, but just kind of off air, it was just like I had said something about, so you guys are gonna be probably really fucking pissed off and angry by the time you go back into the studio. And how is that gonna affect the sound of this new album? So did that come into play at all?
Yes and no. Like, I had to separate myself from a lot of the shit that I had gone through over the last couple of years, because to be honest, like, I kinda skipped angry and just went right to depressed. Like,
Oh,
I just figured, like, well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, for the first 6 months, it's like, okay, this is gonna end any minute now, right? And then you're in year number 2, and then
sure.
you're in year number, and it's like, when the fuck is it, you start thinking, "Am I ever gonna play music again? Like, is this it? Like, am I gonna spend the rest of my life in my house?" So I told myself I wasn't gonna write an entire album about it, and I didn't. Like, I don't wanna look back on this album in 10 years or 20 years or 40 years and like relive one of the shittiest eras of human history. I don't wanna, like, have an entire album about COVID and lockdowns and all that sort of shit. There are a couple of songs that, lyrically, they're the in kind of a cryptic way. I did address some of the stuff that was on my mind, of course, but, pissed off, I don't know, maybe not so pissed off, but I do think that I wrote the album that I wanted to write, and I think that's, like, the most important thing, is that I wrote something that felt very true to me in the time that I wrote it. So it's not Eradication, and I love Eradication. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that everybody enjoyed it as much as they did, but, like, I don't wanna write the same album every time I go into the studio, and I was in a different headspace, and my influences were a lot different. I made it a point to kinda not listen to thrash metal
Yeah.
a whole lot, like, during the writing process, and, kind of getting back into some of the old hardcore stuff that I cut my teeth playing, and, kinda spending a lot of time at the record store because there's nothing else to do, and, kinda getting into a lot of kind of obscure, sort of, weird psychedelic and garage bands, and just sort of, I don't know, and I'm not saying that crept a whole lot into the writing, but it just took me out of that, like, Metallica, Megadeth headspace for 5 minutes, and I just think, like, it was nice to go into it with kind of a clean slate and an open mind, and just let the songs sorta, like, organically come together. I don't feel like I forced anything on this album.
Yeah, and so you were awesome enough to give me a little sneak peek of a couple of these tracks, and the first one, I don't know if we can say names of songs or whatnot, but
Well, I leaked them on the set list. We did play. I sent you those two because those are the two we played in Mexico. So
okay, great.
so somewhere on a cell phone, deep in the heart of Mexico, exists like a video of these songs, I'm sure. But like amazingly, they have not surfaced or leaked yet. I don't know. I don't know if we were even supposed to play them live, but man, fuck it. Like we had fun playing them. But
Well, I will
we'll,
I
we'll
will
call
refer to them as song number 1 and song number 2.
we can call them Miracle, and we can call the other one Killdozer.
Okay.
Those were the set list names. So
Okay, so the artist currently known as Miracle, I think that the first thing that really jumped out at me about that was the fact that it started off, as you said, not thrash. The first 3 notes of that, I was like, not thrash. And that wasn't a derogatory statement. I was like, ooh, this is something different. And it kind of had like a hardcore vibe to it, and then it's kind of like some slower mid-pace chording, a little bit of dissonance on there, and a really cool kind of reverby lead guitar fill over the top, semi kind of harmony vibe. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of like haunty and fucking eerie, and I don't know where this is going to go. And so like within the first 30 seconds of that song, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is clearly it's got your sonic signature to it, but it struck me as not what I was expecting, right? That song is, if that's indicative of what you guys are doing on this album, I'm shitting myself with anticipation on this. I already was, but now even more so.
yeah, I mean, I love that song. And the funny thing about that song is like that was the one that everyone. Now I say everyone, not myself. I was the only one that believed in that song. The whole rest of the band fucking hated that song. They almost didn't want to record that song. And I was like, dudes, just stick it. Like the working title of that song was called Beep Beep Boop. and and the reason for that was the verse guitar riff, that the da da da, you know the riff I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, that riff caused such a fight when I brought that to the band space because no one could hear where the one started on that riff. And so they were like, it's out of time, and I'm like, it fits on a fucking grid, like it's all a beep or a boop, so like it got called Beep Beep Boop. But yeah, that song was something so like out of left field for us to do, but like by the time you put the familiar vocals on it, like you got the
Right.
same voice, you got you know kind of like my signature like right hand work. Once you start layering it up, it's like you start with something sort of different and obscure, but like you put the Workhorse flavor on top of it, and then you put the Workhorse production on it, all sort of stuff. Like it became a Workhorse song, I hope it's the first single. I don't know yet what's going to be a single, what's not. That's a conversation we're having this week. But like I'm like super hard pushing for that to be the first one. I just thought the song kicked serious ass. So like I'm glad that you liked it.
I liked it, and I think what I liked about it was it it definitely builds, right? It definitely has a lot of dynamics. It's got some slow parts, it's got some fast parts. Kind of reminds me of maybe some of the early prongy kind of stuff that you just don't know what to expect out of how the song is building. And then yeah, by the time you get, into it a minute or two, then you're like, oh, okay, it's fucking it's taken off. But yeah, it's just that's a very very well written, catchy with a lot of groove. Definitely almost like an exhorter groove in that sense. It's very pockety, which I absolutely love, and it was just really unexpected. And then
Uh,
the other song, the Killdozer, I think for
Killdozer, a
uh,
working title, Killdozer.
that one also very solid. I felt like a little bit more traditional, what people might expect from War Curse. Kind of
Yeah.
had some more of that just really heavy fucking in your face thrash stuff. So two completely different takes on where you guys are on this album. So it just again it leads me to think like where you guys gonna go with this, and it's just sounding so freaking killer. I think people are they're gonna be surprised and impressed. I think so.
I'm glad, man. I'm glad you liked them both. Killdozer was a really fun one. Like that was one. Some of those riffs, like I keep a giant riff bank. Like if I died right now and just handed my phone over to whoever, like they've got enough material. Like you could piece together like 5 albums with like all the riffs that I've got, like either in my garage band or my Pro Tools or my phone, whatever. Like I just write shit every day. And the reason those sound, I guess, a little more like, Eradication is sort of like I wrote those like right after some of those were like, post Eradication riffs, like when I first started writing stuff for this album. So no surprise there. Yeah, a little more on the traditional thrashy side. We threw a couple of little twists and turns in there. We had fun with it, man. And that's all stuff that we hadn't done before, like up till now, everything's been like one heavy rhythm guitar tone, one just smash and riff after another. So it's cool to like, I don't know, take a step back and like my musical interests lie all over the place, and I listen to a lot of these bands that get to do a lot of cool shit. And I ask myself like why we don't get to do cool shit. And I think that thrash metal as a whole, there's like a lot of rules and a lot of boundaries and a lot of, the purest. It's like you can't use effects, you can't, there's like certain things you can do. You can't, you can have vocals like this, but you can't have vocals like that. It's sort of like, I don't know. I just said, fuck it. Like, if people want to say like, oh, they're not a thrash band anymore, then say we're not a thrash band anymore. But like, I don't really care. Like, I just wanted to write a really cool album and like a collection of songs, and I think we did that. So I don't know. I think that song's a thrash song, but I think that when you hear this album, it's kind of well rounded. There's like a lot going on. So
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation actually that I had. You remember when I talked with Vinny Labella, and he said the same thing. He's like, "Man, the fucking gatekeepers."
hmm
He's like, they're just coming out. He's like, I feel like this has still got lots of thrash. It's got a lot of groove in there, but some of these guys are like saying exactly what you said. He's like, yeah, the vocals sound a little too sing-songy on this part, and they're not harsh enough on this part, and your guitar distortion isn't as heavy as it should be, and you're doing too much soloing in this part and this and that. And people just want, half the people want like a really nice production, and the other half the people want your shit to sound like it was made in 1989 or something.
Well, that's the thing. It's like everybody's a fucking expert. It's like, well, then you come write the fucking album for me, or better yet, like you write a better one and put it out yourselves, and we'll see how it does. So it's like, I don't know. I get so tired of the fucking, and that's the thing with thrash metal. It's like thrash metal is my first love. Like
Right.
it's that's the genre that made me pick up a guitar fucking 30 years ago. It's like I love it. I love it to death. But some of the fans are such fucking punishers, and they are so fucking set in their ways. And it's like, nothing against them. If that's what you're into, like fucking cool. That's what you're into.
Yeah.
But like, if you want a band that sounds like whatever, like go listen to that fucking band. Like I'm sure you can like if you need a band that sounds exactly like Metallica and Slayer, go listen to Evile. There's a good example. Like there's a band doing exactly that thing that you like. So just go listen to them. Like don't tell me that like I have to do that.
Yeah. It's tough as an artist, it's like you get to a point like let's just say that you haven't quite established yourself in the way that you want to establish yourself. You feel a lot more freedom to do whatever the hell you want. Then you start building up a fan base. Those fans, they come to like and expect a certain sound out of you, and at some point they expect that that's going to be representative of pretty much what you do for the rest of your fucking life. And let's
Yep.
just say 10 albums later, you're like, man, I really like that area of my career, but I would really like to explore some different things. And then those people shit on you, and you're like, man, do you expect me to just rehash the same shit over and over and over and over again and be happy with it? Do you want me just to phone this shit in, or do you want us to try some new stuff and explore some new ground? And
Yeah. And not saying like they phoned it in. Don't like I want to make that abundantly clear. No, but like, if you want a band that just does the same thing over and over and over again, over being the fucking key word here, just go listen to Overkill. Like you know what you're gonna get. Like they put out the same album every fucking 2 years. It's always good. It always sounds like Overkill. It's great. But like there are bands that they know what they do well and they do it, and then there are bands who I guess whether they're bored or they're experimenting or whether it's part of their musical journey or the mood they were in that day, whatever it is. But like then you got bands that try new shit, like they go out on a limb, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think you see this a lot more in like younger bands, like Bring Me the Horizon being a fantastic example of a band that has just been all over the fucking map.
right.
You know, sometimes the fans will either get through to them or like they'll revisit that time in their career and they'll run with it. Or you look at a band like AFI as a really good example, who started off as kind of like a dirty skate punk sort of band, almost like a hardcore band to a degree. And then, through the evolution of their career, like they had their big hits, like they had the Girls Not Gray era and like the Sorrow Song era and all that sort of stuff where they became like a big, almost like a a radio emo band or some shit. And then now you go listen to them and they're doing like this new wavy sort of like Depeche Mode sort, it's like, but they've reinvented themselves, 7 times. And every time they've done it, like a lot of their core fans have gone with them, which is fucking awesome. Like that's what you want to see. And, I feel like for every fan they lost along the way, they gained too. So like the ones that said, we're not into this era, it's like, that's cool, but somebody else is, so.
Yeah, I think Opeth is a band that I think of when in regards to that, or like, My Dying Bride or Paradise Lost, where they've gone through these evolutions, and some have stuck with them for decades, and I think that's fantastic. And at some point, you have to understand that artists, they're artists, they're creative, they need to try new things. So it's, yeah, man. I mean, I'm not on that side of it anymore. I don't really perform or do that, but I remember that it was a struggle that I had to, what direction do I want to take things? And, I'm just going to write what I'm going to write and what feels good to me. And if you like it, hopefully you do. And if not, fucking, no hard feelings. I guess we're just not meeting at that center ground right now.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And if you want us to sound like Eradication and we don't, the good news is you can still go listen to Eradication. It's still out there for you,
Absolutely.
So, like you said, no hard feelings, I mean, right now, I mean, like Gojira is a good example of a band that's like a constant evolution. And I feel like every time they've evolved, to me anyway. Now, I know you're going to have those fans that loved like that early, like Morbid Angel sound and shit they used to do. But to me, it's like every time Gojira has evolved and like released another album, it's always been better than the album before it. And if not better, it's been different enough that you don't have to necessarily make like a direct comparison, but it's been bigger than the album before it. It's been more successful or better executed or better received or like better reviewed. It's like, I just feel like they constantly move forward and they do it on their own terms. And I fucking love that about that band. So,
Yeah.
if there's something to be learned, like, Gojira is like a perfect case study of a band that, sounds absolutely nothing like their early material, but like they're fucking awesome. So.
Now, the rest of the dudes in War Curse, I mean, you guys definitely have a very listenable cohesion that comes through on the album, but I assume that you all have somewhat different backgrounds. I mean, the first couple War Curse albums definitely had that Bay Area vibe to it, and we definitely talked about that in the past, but this one seems to be veering away from that just a little bit. And so is that kind of the consensus of everybody in the band? Like we're listening to new bands now, there's so many new things, we just have different kinds of influences throughout the band?
I think that's part of it. I mean, so, I've told the story a lot, but for people who haven't heard it or don't know this, like Eradication was written and actually almost completely recorded at one point in time by our first vocalist. So like lyrically, I write most of the lyrics, like almost all of them, but like vocally, that was written with Tarek's voice in mind.
Right.
And Tarek and Blaine are just such wildly different vocalists, different singers. I mean, they couldn't be any further apart. So like the last album, you didn't really get a lot of Blaine's influence. You didn't really get a lot of Blaine's personality or Blaine's ability, because those songs were written for somebody else. Like he went in on literally a 2-day notice. Like we threw him in the studio, and the first time he heard a lot of those songs, and this is a testament to Blaine's talent, but like the first time Blaine heard some of those songs was when he was standing there recording them. So like he went, some of those songs, like he'd have to play it back 3 or 4 times, or like I'd have to sing a guide track, and then he would just sing over top of it with my shitty vocals, like in his headphones or whatever. So, it's amazing that Eradication turned out as well as it did, given the circumstances under which it was made. But like with this album, it was a lot more collaborative. Blaine is by far the best guitar player in our band. Dude's amazing, but his influences are a lot different than mine. Blaine is, well, he's a little younger than I am for one, but like he got into metal at a totally different time. Like I grew up in a household with metal, like my parents were into it and their friends were into it. So like, my early exposure to metal was, everything from Black Sabbath forward, where Blaine, like, I think he discovered metal during like the Killswitch Engage boom. Like Blaine was like a metalcore kid that then found thrash metal and like then found, Metallica and whatever. So he kind of like worked backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but the stuff that he listens to is like nowhere even remotely close to like the same stuff that, like say myself or like Murphy listens to. James is into a lot of like death metal and a lot of different stuff. Johnny, our bass player, he's into a lot of black metal and a lot of weird like European shit. So yeah, I mean, like we've all got definitely like a different interest, and we all try to bring what makes sense to the table. It's like we're not gonna. I mean, I'll never say never, but like we're probably not gonna like veer off into like 220 BPM blast beat world anytime soon. But like within reason though, we try to like take some of that outside mojo, so to speak, from everybody's kind of like preferences and somehow make it work or at least keep everybody happy enough that they don't quit. So it's like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, me and Blaine work very well together. And I think it was cool to have somebody who comes from like a different place to bounce ideas off of, both guitar and vocally.
Yeah.
Like there's times that he can show me things, there's times I can show him things. So it's kind of cool because like Murphy and myself have been in bands together for so long that I feel like we're basically the same person. Like our influences are the same, like our backgrounds are the same. We've played in bands together so damn long that like, there's only so many tricks on the guitar, I guess. And like me and Murphy kind of share the same tricks, so it's like it's cool to have somebody with like a different bag of tricks.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and you've also, I mean, your friends and your relationships with people in the industry that go back a very long way. Yeah, I'm sure people that you've worked with and people that I mean, there's no way that those influences aren't going to just sneak in there because you're just constantly exposed to them. And learning new tricks is great, but everybody has their comfort zone. It's when you kind of deviate from that comfort zone that the real fucking magic starts happening.
Yeah, and I think that like my default comfort zone, of course, I mean, like kind of the Bay Area thing. If you just handed me a guitar and said play something, like that's what kind of comes out. Eradication basically is what's going to come out. But if you didn't put me on the spot and you gave me like 2 days and you said write me something, I'm going to come back and listen to it. I mean, hell, I could write you any song you want. I mean, like my influences and the stuff that I listen to outside of thrash metal are just so vast. Like I like a lot of pop punk bands,
Yeah.
like a lot of like modern pop punk stuff I listen to. I listen to a lot of the modern metal bands. Architects is a big band that I'm heavily into right now. And like, I mean, Wage War and some of like the younger dudes that are doing cool stuff, I pay a lot of attention to that stuff. But, I might get off here and like go listen to a Rainbow album or like, Deep Purple's a big influence. Like I love Richie Blackmore, so it's like, it's good to be able to pull things from different worlds when like when you're fishing for something or like when you hit that wall. It's like you can only like downpick a straight time riff, so many different ways. It's like you got to have something else, I guess, to look at.
Yeah. You can only chug and gallop so many times before you run out of patterns.
Exactly,
at least for
yeah.
me. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I definitely don't have the right hand that I used to. I guess I have to do more right hand work, if you know what I mean.
Well, I guess the best I guess the best way to look at it is like technical abilities aside, like songs come first. That's the best way to look at it. And that's like before I consider myself a guitarist, because there's a million people who play guitar better than me. And before I consider myself a musician, because what the fuck does that mean anymore? Like I'm a songwriter. I like songs. I like songs with hooks. I like songs that I can remember. I like songs that take me to a certain place or make me feel a certain thing. And like the guitar to me is just kind of a means to an end. Like that's how I'm going to convey that emotion into whatever the fuck I'm doing that day. The guitar is a tool. I'm not one of these 10-hour a day fucking obsessive guitar player dudes that knows all the names of everything. I don't know shit about, theory or any of this other stuff, but like I know how to write a song, and that's like what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, clearly you're getting that message across. If those two songs that I heard again have any bearing on what's to come, I think we're in for a sonic fucking ass fucking of a treat. And I'm ready for some new stuff. I mean, I've been out of it for a bit, took a little bit of a break, had to decompress and think about some things, and I'm coming back and things are just getting sent to me, and it's just such a cool feeling to see people, such as yourself, but so many others that are renewed. Things are happening, and the energy is back, the vibe is back, and I do believe it's back, and it's feeling pretty fucking rad. So it sounds to me like you guys getting ready for some really cool shit to happen. So what can we expect next? Are we going to see some more playing out before the album comes out? Or are you guys going to take some time and just kind of work on promotional things?
Right now, I'm starting to write the next one. And the only reason I'm doing this is I don't want to have another giant gap between releases.
Yeah.
And I know that like we're planning some tours for later this year. I want to at least get some of the writing and some of the demoing out of the way before we get busy, so that we don't have to like go through busy season, go through an album cycle, and then hit the reset button and start working on this sort of stuff.
Sure.
So like while we're in shape and while I'm in that mode, like I'm just kind of focusing on getting the next batch of songs started. We're definitely working on some tours, working on some ideas. Next steps, I mean, I assume sometime this week I'll find out like what the release date is. And, we'll start planning singles, we'll start shooting videos, we'll start doing all the fun shit that goes with releasing an album. So that's going to keep us busy for sure.
Yeah, and no doubt, Metal Blade will be footing some of that bill for some top notch production stuff that I am sure we will all be excited to see and hear.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So, anticipation of a date coming here pretty soon down the road, being able to maybe release some singles, that's a definite possibility. I think that with what Warcurse it has kind of become known for, it seems to me that you guys are on track to become a staple in the industry. What are some of the other bands that you have been into that we should give some recognition to? I know that you're a huge proponent of like the underground thrash scene, and as much as you love the OGs, you are probably one of the first people I think of when it comes to giving some props to some of the newer bands. So who's out there right now that we should be checking out?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of pride myself in that, and I appreciate that you've noticed that. I think there's a wealth of amazing young bands out there that get overlooked, and it's kind of a shame. There's a band we toured with in 2019 called Tyrant. I know that's kind of you're gonna find like 4 Tyrants when you search for them, but they're the young ones. Tyrant put out an album this year that I thought, or last year, I guess technically, I thought it was one of the best albums. It was like my top 2 albums. I had that and Architects as like the 2 best albums that came out last year. Definitely look that up. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good bands out there. Maybe not even thrash metal bands, but just as a whole, there's just a lot of good bands out there. Tyrant, though, is definitely one that stands out to me. Bloodletter is another really good one. They released an EP last year. I know they are currently in the studio working on an album right now. I'm sure they don't mind me saying that. But Bloodletter from Chicago, absolute sick thrash band. Lots of speed, lots of intensity, really cool guitar work, good vocals. I'm a big fan of Bloodletter. Strike Master's actually got an album that's finishing up right now, and I've heard some stuff off of that, and it kicks serious ass. So you can look forward to a new Strike Master album this year. Yeah, I don't know who else I should plug, man. I mean, I feel like I'm gonna hurt some feelings. I gotta plug everybody. We could be sitting here for a long time.
Everybody, yeah. So, and I do that is one of the things that I do appreciate about you is that you're very outspoken and very much a supporter of music as a whole, not just genre driven. And you still do work in the industry and have lots of contacts. So hopefully that some of that exposure helps some of these bands get some airplay and get some nice live shows in the works. And I'm hoping that we see, because as we talked about previously as well, at some point all of these OGs, they're going to die. Somebody needs to take the helm, right? What's going to happen, when the big 4 isn't around anymore? Do we get a new big 4? Is there going to be just somebody that slides into their place who maybe wasn't quite the big 4, but now they're the big 4? Or do we get a new big 4, big 5, big 6 of all these emerging bands that nobody knows who they are yet?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like the industry has sort of like, they sort of touch a band every so often. And it seems like right now, if I had to say like the next crop, because yeah, I mean, you look at the current landscape, and you and I have talked about this infinite amount of times. And I think we talked about it last time we were on here, but like, hell, now all these dudes are 60. Like they're all having their 60th birthdays,
Yeah.
How much longer do you expect the guys in their 60s to be able to? Thrash metal is a very physically demanding genre. Like
Right.
to play an hour-long thrash metal set. Like I went to the gym for months leading up to this last tour to get my cardio feeling good and like make sure I wasn't going to fall apart on stage. And you expect these guys in their 60s to get up there and perform these wild sets. Metallica plays 2.5 hours or some shit. But it's not going to last forever. But I feel like Lamb of God has been like anointed, like they're the next one, like they've gotten the big direct support or co-headlining spot on like the last, I don't know, 10 big tours that have happened. So Lamb of God's in line. I would say Ghost, definitely as of right now. I mean, I don't know, call metal, get mad at me, whatever. But Ghost is certainly being groomed as like a next big headliner. They're up to like 10 million monthly Spotify listeners right now, which I find fucking insane.
Yeah.
Like I remember when Ghost had like 100,000 listeners and people were losing their minds. Like, so yeah, I mean, Ghost is a big one. Arch Enemy, if they can survive Alyssa's upcoming solo career, we'll see how that goes. Gojira for sure. You got to have them in that conversation. And definitely Architects, which, that's sort of like a almost kind of a different genre, but there is like some overlap. It's certainly metal, but it's like a different. I feel like a lot of people who listen to all the bands I said before that, like they probably don't know one Architect song, but they better start paying attention because that band is like selling out huge venues. Trivium's another one, like they'll be up there, so there's some bands in the waiting in the wings, I guess, for the 60-year-olds to go away. And yeah, I would love our name to be in that conversation at some point, but we've certainly got some work to do and a lot of miles to put in before that happens.
Yeah. Well, you're just a bunch of young whippersnappers, right? But yeah, I
O-
think
only in thrash metal can you
yeah.
be a bunch of 30 and 40-year-old men and be considered like a young band. That tells you where this genre is at. Like I've aged out of every other genre. I'm
Yeah.
way I'm way too old to like start a pop punk band and like go on Warped Tour or some shit.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm starting to see that be the thing as well. The 60-year-old emo guys, they're starting to pop up too.
The world really needs like 15 more My Chemical Romance reunions. That's what we need.
Yeah, what was that tour from a couple years ago I was laughing about? I can't remember what it was, but there was some ridiculous tour. It was just a bunch of emo. And don't get me wrong, I'm not slamming a genre, but I was just like, they named it something epic, and I was like, I don't even know who half these bands are.
I love that they do that, and they do that the big When We Were Young festival.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I love the name, man. I don't care. Like that's fucking clever, man.
That was some good marketing behind that. I didn't know who most of them were, but that's when I felt old. I was like,
I was gonna say that tells you how fucking old we are, man.
yeah.
Like we were old already when they were young, so and now they're old, so I don't know.
Get off my lawn. So, get off my metal lawn. So, all right, well, I'm going to wind this down here with you, but in traditional fashion, I want to play one more game with you of Who Sucks More. This one's a little less involved than the last one, but I'm sure you'll get a couple of these references because one of these comes from a post from you, actually. So, okay, Who Sucks More? Bands that complain about having to do meet and greets or bands that charge astronomical fees for said meet and greets. And there's one particular person that I'm laughing about thinking about a post you did.
Well, you got to be talking about Doyle.
Maybe.
But you want to know what's funny? I feel like it's hard to differentiate the two because that's like the same thing. Like astronomical price, complains about it. That's like the same. It's like one of the same. I don't know. I guess the complainer, because if the band charging a bunch for it but they're still enjoying it, that sucks a lot less than like the band that's charging a bunch for it and still fucking complaining about it. So I guess the answer is Doyle sucks more than everybody else.
Yeah, and it's really funny because when I saw that come through, that was not the first time I'd saw that. So clearly he had made the rounds on the I'm a fucking douche circuit. It was pretty funny.
Well, yeah, and he fucking cried about like, I have to do these meet and greets because my shitty fans are stealing my music. Shut the fuck up, man. I don't know who the fuck's spending any fucking money whatsoever to go meet that fucking guy, but goddamn, man.
Yeah.
Get over yourself.
All right, so let's see. Who sucks? Bands that charge for photo ops post-pandemic, but still make fans wear masks and take long-distance selfies to get the picture. Or bands that just simply won't engage fans post-pandemic. Oh, what was that? I'm sorry. Did you say Testament?
I had a cough. I was choking on some Fresca. I don't know, man. It's like, I'm just amazed. It's almost like nothing surprises me anymore. I don't know. I sincerely do not understand bands that do this shit and fans that go along with it. So like, I don't know if you're going to pay for a fucking photo or a meet and greet with a band, and everybody was calling it the meet and 50 feet because like or the 50 feet and greet was a good one that I heard. Yeah, I don't know. If I'm paying you for a picture, one, I would never fucking do that. But if I'm paying you for a picture and you're like on the stage blurry and some assholes like using a cell phone, I don't know, man. What the fuck? Who's paying for this shit? It's the fans' fault that it even exists, man. And quit paying for this shit. Quit giving these bands your money.
Yeah, could you not just walk up in front of the stage and turn around and take the picture anyway and not pay fucking $50 for that?
Yeah, but if you're we'll keep politics out of this, but like if you're a politician, it's fine. Like they'll take a picture with you.
Right.
So
absolutely. Kiss my baby, motherfucker.
Absolutely. Kiss my ass is more like it. Yeah. I'm not giving it. So I forgot what the fucking question was, but fuck them all. How about that?
Yeah. So, okay. Last one. Who or what sucks more? Chinese spy balloons or toxic train derailments?
I'm gonna say train derailments because I don't even know what the fuck that shit was in the sky, but I don't know. You can't trust China, so
There you go.
but that train derailment's nuts, man. And what's crazy is that happens a lot more than people think.
You're right.
I actually used to, years and years ago, I had like a short fling with some chick whose dad was he was a train what do they call the guys that drive the train? A conductor or an
Yeah,
engineer?
conductor.
I don't know what the hell they call them. But either way, this dude, like, he operated a train for a living, and like he would come home and like, oh yeah, I hit another person today, and it was like casual as shit. But I guess it's underreported. No one talks about it. But I guess like it's very common for trains to derail. It happens all the time, and a lot of trains, almost all trains. I think the problem with the Ohio one was like they were over the limit of like what they were supposed to have on it. But they're almost every train has some kind of like toxic stuff on it. They're supposed to limit it, but I guess this is a very common thing, so I think it's funny that now we're just like funny, not funny, but like, that we're hearing about it now nonstop. Like every day a train derails, but like, guess what? These trains have always derailed. So
Yeah, and they're always carrying something questionable. That's
yeah,
for sure.
crazy shit, man. Crazy time to be alive.
So, right, such is the world. Crazy times to be alive. So, Justin, anything else that we need to plug for you today? Anything else you want to share with the world before I let you get back to writing your next metal opus?
Ah, man, I don't know. I think we've kind of covered it. So Workhorse album number 3 coming in sometime soon. We'll have a release date soon. So if you don't follow us on social media already, please go do so. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't know. I don't know if Murphy's on TikTok or not. We don't really do that shit. But yeah, or just go to workhorse.com, follow Metal Blade Records, follow Blacklight Media, and details coming soon.
There you go, bitches. Justin Roth, War Curse. Thank you very much, brother. Always an honor talking to you. Always a blast. And we're going to have to do it again because I know we just have no shortage of awesome things to talk about.
Absolutely, man. You're a great conversationalist, and I always enjoy coming on.
All right. Thanks. Cheers, man.